The strawberry your grandmother ate doesn't exist anymore. Not the variety. Not the flavor. The actual thing she bit into on a summer afternoon 60 years ago is gone, and the red, perfect, fist-sized berry sitting in your fridge right now is something else wearing its name. You've probably blamed yourself for this. You bite into a supermarket tomato and it tastes like wet cardboard, and you assume your memory is exaggerating. That childhood fruit couldn't really have been that good. You were a kid. Everything tasted better. But you're not wrong. And the reason you're not wrong is one of the strangest accidents in the history of food. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the produce aisle. Almost everything in it was designed. Not grown the way it grew for 10,000 years, but deliberately reshaped over the last century by people solving a very specific problem. And the problem was never flavor. Think about what a tomato has to survive now. It gets picked while it's still hard and green, often by machine. It gets packed into a crate, loaded onto a truck, and shipped sometimes 2,000 miles. It sits in cold storage. It gets gas to turn red on schedule. Then it has to sit on a shelf under fluorescent light for days looking flawless, because you won't buy the ugly one. Every one of those steps is a thing breeders selected for. Firmness, so it doesn't bruise. Uniform color, so it looks ripe. Size, because produce is sold by weight. Shelf life, yield, shipping durability. Decade after decade, the plants that did those things best got bred again, and the ones that didn't got thrown out. And here's the part that matters. Nobody was choosing for taste. Not because they were careless, because they couldn't see it. Harry Klee, a horticultural scientist at the University of Florida, spent more than 5 years running taste tests to figure out what went wrong. And he found that flavor isn't one thing you can point to. A tomato's taste comes from sugars plus a fragile orchestra of volatile compounds, the aromatic chemicals that hit your nose, not your tongue. Klee compares it to an orchestra. If you remove one instrument, like a clarinet, you won't notice a big difference. So when breeders accidentally removed one flavor gene, then another, no single loss was loud enough to notice. The symphony got quieter one instrument at a time across 50 years, and by the time anyone listened closely, half the orchestra had walked off stage. When Klee's team compared 101 varieties, the bland commercial ones had significantly reduced levels of 13 compounds tied to better flavor. But the single best example of how this happened, the one that should make you stop and stare, is about the color red. Go back to the 1920s. Tomatoes back then ripened unevenly. They'd have a patchy green collar around the stem while the rest turned red, which made them look unfinished. Then breeders stumbled onto a natural mutation. Tomatoes that ripened to one smooth, even, uniform red. It was deliberately bred into almost all tomatoes because it made them a uniform, luscious scarlet when ripe. There was just one problem, and nobody would understand it for almost 90 years. In 2012, a team led by Ann Powell at UC Davis published in the journal Science what that mutation actually did. The uniform ripening mutation disables a gene called GLK2, which normally increases the fruit's photosynthetic capacity, producing higher sugar content. Those uneven green shoulders everyone bred away? They were tiny solar panels. They were where the tomato made its own sugar. So, in chasing a prettier red, breeders had switched off the factory that made the fruit sweet. When researchers put an intact copy of the gene back in, glucose and fructose in the ripe fruit rose by up to 40%. Now here's the line that should stop you cold. That sugar-killing mutation isn't in some tomatoes. Klee has said the mutation is in literally 100% of modern breeds sold in grocery stores today. Every uniform red tomato you have ever bought carries it. The redness you reach for is the visible mark of the thing that made it bland. You have been trained to select for the symptom. And it isn't only tomatoes. The same trade runs through the whole produce aisle. The strawberry got bigger, brighter, and tougher for shipping, and watered down on the way. Because here's the quiet math underneath all of it. When you breed a plant to grow faster and produce bigger fruit, you're making more plant material, but the plant can't pull nutrients and flavor compounds out of the soil any faster to fill it. So everything gets diluted. More water, more bulk, less concentrated everything that mattered. Scientists have a name for this: the dilution effect. And in 2004, a biochemist named Donald Davis compared USDA nutrition data for 43 crops between 1950 and 1999. Considered as a group, 6 of 13 nutrients showed reliable declines, ranging from 6% for protein to 38% for riboflavin. His most likely explanation was the change in cultivated varieties, driven above all by the push for higher yields. So the fruit didn't just lose its taste, it got measurably emptier. A modern tomato is bigger, redder, tougher, cheaper, available in February, and a fainter copy of the thing it's named after in almost every way you can't see at a glance. And this is where it stops being a story about tomatoes, because none of this was a conspiracy. Nobody sat in a room and decided to ruin food. Every single choice was rational. Ship farther, waste less, look better, grow more, feed more people for less money. Those are good goals. The system did exactly what we asked it to do. We just never once asked it for flavor. And the market gave us precisely what we measured and nothing we didn't. The unsettling part isn't that the strawberry changed. It's that the change is invisible from inside it. You can't taste an absence. You can't miss a compound you've never tasted in a fruit that was already diluted before you were born. A whole generation is now growing up calibrated to the faint version, and to them it isn't faint. It's just what a strawberry tastes like. Which raises the real question. If the thing your grandmother ate is gone, and you've never tasted it, and the copy keeps quietly getting fainter with each generation that doesn't notice, how would any of us ever know what we've already lost? The fruit still looks perfect. That was always the point.